Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and this is your New Eden news for February 11th, YC 127. Tash Murkon celebrates as Cluster fights back. Empress praises victors of Tash Murkon. Tash Murkon Prime, Tash Murkon. Empress Caddis I greeted crowds at the Winter Palace of House Tash Murkon following the first successful destruction of a vigilant dreamer in their home system. The Empress's own royal house declared a region-wide day of celebration following the explosion of the drifter-controlled structure by Capsuleers. Quote, almost 9.5 years ago, my predecessor was assassinated by a fleet of the same profane monstrosities that plague our heavens once more, the Empress began. They dared to try usurp our Lord's will and challenge our faith. Well, the faithful have risen to that challenge like a righteous flame. In these skies, as in Kobam and in Anath, we have proved that none can stand against us. End quote. Those gathered erupted in cheers. The Empress also took the time to read the honors list of pilots who claimed victory against the Vigilant Dreamer, awarded the newly minted Tash Murkon Dreambreaker's Shield to the following pilots: Skyscream X, who struck the final blow, Ada May, Alicia Evelyn, Andreas Uhad, Balio Soph, Beauregard Jefferson III, Bilsonian, Chaos 1298, lowercase Chaos 1298, Capsir Luis, D Apostle 17, Dabbington, Dutch Gunner, El Puffington, Face Eating Tumor, Law 1127, Lorgar, Plug and Play, Rimtas Joakas, Skuztazar, Aneto, Stavri, Tokar Zemanev, Torori, Kanto, and Velen Moonshatter. Lord Turner Tash Murkon, heir and head of House Tash Murkon, welcomed the Empress's words, adding his gratitude for the support of the other heirs during this trying time. The other royal houses have historically held mixed sentiments towards the Tash Murkon. The Eudorian heritage and pragmatic economic approach have caused some members of the Holder caste to join militant terrorist organizations such as the Disciples of Purity, formerly Purity of the Throne, rather than acknowledge Empress Catis Tash Murkon I as their ruler. Today, not a single negative sentiment could be found in print regarding the house, as people took to the streets to celebrate across the empire. Lord Aram Ardashapur even went as far as to call their victory a sign of divine purpose, going on to say that, quote, in this time of conflict, we are blessed to have an empress from such a resilient people, end quote. First triumphs claimed by Caldari and Minmatar, while Federation struggles. The victory over Tash Murkon Prime was one of 8 drifter retreats across the cluster. The Caldari were first to push them back in Ishinumi, shortly followed by Minmatar Republic in Jafur. Both Caldari and Amar have claimed a total of 3 victories over drifter forces, with the Minmatar claiming 2. Despite providing the first warnings of incoming drifter attacks, the Galente Federation has yet to secure a system against the invaders. Chairman Akimakar Saraki has once again commended state forces and Capsuleers alike in their successes in Ishinumi, Ceylon, and Ruvas. Quote, swift in their response, our loyal ships were first to force a drifter retreat. A unified and disciplined response with Capsuleer support has proven once more to be the key that unlocks triumph, end quote. Megacorporations Lidai, Suikavesta, and Hasiota joined the chairman in his praise as the stations within the affected systems were able to return to business as usual. Saraki commented that, quote, when faced with an outside threat, there are no factions, only Caldari, end quote. Despite their initial lack of preparation, incredible effort by Minmatar forces and their Capsuleer allies were more than enough to defeat the drifters, first in Gafur, then in Nian. Sadmatar Maltu Shakur has cited these victories as, quote, proof of the importance of tribal unity, end quote. Thucker Chief Enar Abdul, who has been openly critical of the Republic's response, declined to comment. Elsewhere in the Republic, the citizens of Hadozeko were not so fortunate. The command operations system military bases seemed secure in their endless war with the Amar, but many of their clans have suffered massive losses to the drifters. Similar hardships were felt in the Caldari systems of Fuskunin and all across the Federation. The first to warn of the upcoming crisis, the Galente Federation has suffered the most greatly as it unfolds. The systems of Hare, Nibali, and Garikwe all experienced significant losses, despite Capsuleer's best efforts. President Celis Agard has called once more for Capsuleers to, quote, join us in standing up for liberty. These invaders openly call themselves tyrants. They must not be allowed to harm our citizens. Even now they attack us once more in Nasheshi, Ravarin, and Uphin. It is up to us to secure the future of our democracy, our liberty, against these aggressors, end quote. SOCT updates Dreamer tracking as Drifter alters tactics. Using telemetry gathered during the Vigilant Dreamer's destruction in Tash Murkon, the Society of Conscious Thought has been able to synthesize new upgrades for crisis response fleets. Targeting computer modifications and improved hyperspace tracking methodologies will ensure Vigilant Dreamers remain available for assault as long as they are in system. At the same time, however, SOCT intel indicates that drifters are committing to more persistent Vigilant Dreamer deployments. Dreamers are now expected to remain in system until they have completed their tasks or are destroyed in the attempt. This will mean no more retreats by drifter forces as long as the Vigilant Dreamers remain operational. The SOCT have also observed a spike in drifter hyperspace communication traffic throughout the MR Empire, simultaneous with drops in traffic throughout Galente space. These changes follow the recent successes against the drifters in MR space, along with uninterrupted streams of drifter sites in Federation space. News in brief. SOCT continues to dismiss rumors of visions of doom as Capsuleers reconstruct data captured from drifter sites. Uproar over irresponsible Nibali Mineclash tournament after fans disrupt evacuation efforts. Arataka Research Consortium holds public fleets to stave off drifter attacks. The 19th Council of Stellar Management disperses as summit comes to an end. High ship losses posted when Deepwater hooligans and allies face off against Shadow Cartel in Alashin. And that is it for your New Eden News for today, February 11th, YC127. Now for some analysis. And boy, do we have some things to talk about when it comes to analysis. So we've been watching this play out over the course of about a week, and this represents the end of Cycle 2. So if you remember, Cycle 1, it was almost impossible to make any significant progress. So all of the different drifter sites completed their tasks. The entire cycle went through until they timed out and they ended. But with the previous New Eden News, they talked about how during that time, 7,000 operations had been done against the drifters and new sites were coming up. And they specifically called out these new sites as places of interest. Specifically, Tash Murkon Prime was called out, as well as some other places, including the Mineclash tournament in Nibali. And I talked about then on the stream and in the video that we're going to be watching these things to see how it progresses. And we see a lot of the results of that in this latest news. The biggest one, of course, is that we have now successfully destroyed a Vigilant Dreamer. This is an actual screenshot from Walter Islands, a Capsuleer, who recorded the Vigilant Dreamer site, which is a special site that spawns in drifter systems only after the influence has been pushed up to 100% by running the other 4 drifter sites. There's a relic hacking site. There is a site where you have to cap up a dreadnought 3 times in order to destroy the Vigilant Scrutinizer. So basically, the drifters are putting this structure next to various homes and structures within the system and nuking that structure with all kinds of radiation and recording the torturous effects this has on the people inside of those structures. So you go in and you cap up the dreadnought and it blows up the thing that's doing that torture. The third site is you go to a place where the local defenses, Empire Defenses has defeated the sleepers in that area, and so there's just a bunch of wrecks for you to go in and salvage while sleepers try to attack you in order to get military war clones out of those wrecks. And the final site is the Deathless is attempting to research and study the wormholes, and that research station has come under attack, and so you have to come and repair that station while keeping the incoming DPS down, so that way you can successfully save the station for the total time that it's trying to do its research. So those are the 4 sites that you can do in these drifter areas, and completing those sites increase the progress within those systems. And then when that system gets to 100%, it unlocks a 5th site. And that 5th site is the Vigilant Dreamer, which is the head of the entire thing. And this is closer to the hacking site from Homefronts, where there are multiple cans that must be hacked at the same time. Because if any of the cans are on lockdown, then the entire site is on lockdown. You can't attack the central point. And then when you successfully hack a can, it remains unlocked for 90 seconds. So the goal is to unlock all of I think it's 4 cans at the same time to maximize the window of opportunity that you have to damage the main building. And I know that this is about the lore and not necessarily about the mechanics, but I think this is kind of important because they're discussing the mechanics in the lore. It's just hard to understand if you don't understand what's actually happening. So that Vigilant Dreamer site is just like the rest of the home fronts. Originally, they had a timer for success. You go in there, you hack the cans at the same time. That opens up a window of opportunity. You damage the thing, and then you blow up the stuff. The problem was that because the site had a fail timer, when that site failed, from my understanding, the entire drifter crisis ends. Basically, the drifters, quote unquote, win if they can manage to hold off your attacks for long enough against the Vigilant Dreamer. Combine that with the fact that there were people that, because this is Eve, there were people that were trying to disrupt the efforts of other people. People would go in and disrupt and bump people away from the cans, causing them to fail the hack. And because you had to like anticipate and prepare and coordinate in order to do it, they were able to make the site fail, which is why we see that the Caldari were the first to complete their site. The Caldari claim victory in the fact that they were the first to force the drifters to retreat. But Tash Murkon was the first to successfully destroy the Vigilant Dreamer. Now, this is an important distinction and it's important to know, especially as people like to claim that this kind of stuff is scripted or whatever. Like, oh, well, CCP did this on purpose. I think that we can learn a lot about kind of how these sorts of live events play out by looking at how these especially this last cycle has played out. Because there's a lot of things where you could look at it and be like, well, of course, this is what's going to happen. You can predict what's going to happen based on the initial conditions. But don't confuse that with it being scripted. I know that during invasions and other previous cycles, or even in faction warfare, the control over what systems come under fire during invasions, and even with faction warfare and the construction of the landing platforms, these are actually controlled by an AI actor that has their own priority that's able to pick the system. So it's not like CCP necessarily picks where these things go, but the AI is given priorities and it picks when it wants to attack where. I don't know if that's 100% for sure in this system, but this is something that CCP has been really working on for many, many years in the background. They don't really talk about it with us that much, but I only assume based on the fact that this is built on previous technology that it's kind of the same way. The point here is that we know if you're going to attack even distributed, Amarr, Minmatar, Caldari, Gallente, without even checking, I can predict that the Caldari will complete theirs first. Because Caldari Highsec is PvE land. If there are sites to run, they're going to be run more often in Caldari Highsec, almost exclusively. So the fact that the Caldari were the first to complete their drifter sites once it was updated to make it so it was even possible to be completed, that just makes sense. Doesn't mean it's scripted, it just means it's predictable. In the same way, Tash Murkon, so like once that site failed to be completed, that kind of put the pressure on people to get it right the next time. Just as much as it's predictable to say that the Caldari would probably be the first to finish their sites, it's also predictable to believe that the Caldari are the most likely to be disrupted when trying to do something. I've said this many, many times before. If you don't want to get ganked in Highsec, mining or whatever, step one, leave Caldari Highsec. Caldari Highsec is where all of the bad actors live because that's where everybody is. If more people are doing PvE in Caldari Highsec, then that means that more people that prey on people that do PvE are also going to be in Caldari Highsec. Nobody wants to be too far from Jita. In comparison, the Amarr are much more spread out, and also the people that are in Amarr space are more loyal to Amarr. Combine that with the fact that choosing Tash Murkon Prime, again, I don't know if CCP chose that intentionally for round 2 or if the NPC actor chose it or whatever, but once it's chosen, as soon as I saw that, I knew that there were going to be big time RP guys that are focused on helping this particular one, not just because it's an interesting content to go after, but because of the fact that it's Tash Murkon Prime. Anybody who has any loyalty to the Empress is likely going to focus on that. And also, it's 40 plus jumps away from Jita now, thanks to Niarja being gone. You're welcome. Basically, it was a prime opportunity for Tash Murkon to be the first site to be successful. Now, what's even more interesting is like, okay, well, what's going on with the Gallente? So it's explainable why the Caldari did so well. It's explainable why the Amarr were the first to succeed because they were dedicated to actually making sure it got done correctly. What's with the Gallente sucking wind? Well, the clue here is if we look at the systems that came under attack by the Federation, systems of Hare, Nibali, and Gurikay. So if we hide this for a second, and we go here, pretty sure it has to be random, otherwise they deliberately sabotage the Galente. Right, well, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know for sure either way. I'm just saying, I think until I get told otherwise that this is probably, again, an NPC actor making these decisions. But let's look at why the Galente did so poorly. Hey, look, Grerique is in Solitude. Solitude is the largest high-sec island in EVE Online. And if we look at the other sites systems, we can see Nibali also in Solitude. And then we can go with Hare, and we see Hare is low-sec, also Solitude. So all three of the Galente sites in this last cycle were all in a high-sec island. So with all things being equal, and you're just opening up your opportunities window, and you're going to interstellar events, and you're looking to see what crises are there, and you go, okay, well, let's check out the Galente ones. Set destination, and every single one you set destination to is not in contiguous high-sec. Why would you go there instead of going somewhere else? And that's what a lot of people did. Granted, the ships that people can use to run these sites are relatively cheap, but asking people to go to a low-sec island is just an additional ask. And so people are going, like, without it being worth anything more, unless somebody is, for some reason, dedicatedly loyal to the Galente and therefore are willing to go out of their way to do that with little warning, because remember, the entire thing played out over 4 days. Of course, they all failed. So again, these are predictable, but not scripted. And the reason why this is important is, like, let's look at RSHAT. RSHAT is a system in the MR, and in this system is a Triglavian stellar transmuter. And this stellar transmuter is the one that the MR researched in order to be able to build their own stellar transmuters, which is what led to the Shadow Wars. And, well, it led to the Turner disaster. You know, Turner, Egmar, and Vard, they put up their own transmuters there, which led to the Shadow Wars, which led to the Shipcaster, etc., etc. But it all started because one of the towers that the Triglavians put up was protected in RSHAT. And the way this happened was when the system, so during invasions, when a system became invaded, unlike with the Drifters, there were sites for both sides. People could progress both sides of the effort. And you had to do it a total of twice. It started out neutral, and then when you pushed it all the way to your side, if the system could progress, it would go into either the process of fortifying or it would go through the process of liminality. If the trig flip it, it would go to first, second, and then final liminality. As soon as it flipped over, it would go to first liminality. Halfway across, it goes to second liminality. And then when they get all the way to the end, then it goes to final liminality, which is when it was locked in, and the 27 final liminality systems were eventually the ones that became Pochvin. However, it was understood from the very beginning of invasions that once a system progressed in one direction or another, it could theoretically be pulled back from the other side, and if it did, it would automatically flip back over to that side's progression. It wouldn't go back to the neutral state, it would go to the fortifying state. And the Triglavians, the pro-Triglavians, I know because I was there, had effectively come to the conclusion that this was just mathematically impossible. That because of the fact that once it starts to progress, new sites start to spawn, and there's kind of a snowball effect, it was basically mathematically impossible for the Triglavians, like once the fortification process began, for us to pull it back and make it go liminal instead. Theoretically could happen. We tried a few times, and then people had just written it off as being mathematically impossible. That's what I was taught, or that's what I was told by people, and, you know, whatever. Then, pro-Eatingcom guys did it. They did it! We got a system into first liminality, and they gave zero shits. They descended upon it with the largest force that we had seen from them the entire invasion, and they kicked us completely out and burned that system for like 24 hours and successfully grabbed it from first liminality and pulled it all the way to fortified. That's why that transmuter is there. If Eatingcom forces, if players had not decided to do that, then Arshat would not have that transmuter, and that entire plot line would have to, at the very least, be different. And you know what the craziest part about this whole story is? You know what the wildest thing about this whole story is? After this incredible feat of prowess and coordination by Edencom in doing what the Triglavians had literally declared to be impossible, what thanks do they get? They've burned themselves out for 48 hours doing this task. The next morning, Niarja goes live. This wasn't on purpose. Nobody predicted it. CCP, who ran the show, didn't even know it was going to happen. But when people tell you that invasions were a foregone conclusion, that CCP did the entire thing just to disrupt the trade hubs, realize that none of it was a foregone conclusion. It all could have gone the other way. And it was only these conditions, plus other pieces of the story, like Goon Swarm getting involved and Tess getting involved and a bunch of other stuff happening, that made Niarja so much of a firestorm as it was. But Arshat was a big component of that people don't really talk about much. Didn't we have Triglavian data that they were surveying Niarja? Yes. Prior to invasions even beginning, we got the reconnaissance reports from the Triglavians, and the one star that we knew that they were interested in, just by the quality of the star, was Niarja, because they said Imminence Gold and Imminence Glory alike. And the only star that had ever been reported as being Imminence Glory was Niarja. So yes, we technically knew that Niarja was going to become part of this whole process a year before it happened. Never stood with the point of disrupting the trade between Jita and Amar, only made life worse for more people that didn't make Amar any better trade hub. Bruno, let me give you a hint. As soon as, and by the way, anybody who's still watching this for the New Eden News for today and the analysis, thanks for still watching. Like the video for all of this awesome commentary. No, just kidding. As soon as Raravas went nullsec, we knew the consequences, at least the starting consequences of invasions, right? We knew that there were consequences. We could turn not necessarily every system. We hadn't quite figured out exactly what made a system eligible or not, but we did know two things. Some systems were eligible, an eligible system. Well, three things. Some systems were eligible. Eligible systems could become nullsec. Niarja was eligible. Those are the three facts I knew. And so I went to every pirate group I knew, every null block I knew, and I sat down with them. I remember teaching, because Goon Swarm showed up during Raravas, but because they hadn't set up their overview correctly, they spent the entire first day killing a bunch of the Trigs and helping Edencom, because the Trigs were attacking them by default, and Edencom was not attacking them by default, and they didn't know any better. So I had to sit down and explain to their FCs, how the actual fighting over systems went. But I made sure, and I talked to a bunch of people, and I was like, so you paying attention to this invasion stuff? And of course, all these guys, all these pirate groups, all these faction warfare guys were like, no, that's stupid PvE stuff. And I just asked them, what are you going to do when Niarja goes live? And they'd always be like, wait, that's a possibility? I'm like, yes, it is a possibility. So I was at least seeding the seeds of the conquest of Niarja for months before it actually went live. You might want to ask yourself, why am I doing that? Is it to make Amar great? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. What does Ashtarothi care about? Ashtarothi cares about Dodixie. You know what killing off the trade route between Jita and Amar did? Really helped Dodixie. So sometimes you got to think a little bit deeper about what the motivations could be. By taking out Niarja, I made, not saying that obviously it was way more than just me. I'm not trying to be like, haha, see how cool I am. That's not my point of what I'm trying to say. My point is that there was a very good purpose for at least my motivation to take Niarja, and that was to make Dodixie great again. And I believe it succeeded, at least somewhat. All right, so Dodixie rules. Yeah, exactly. Dodixie's the best. Well, that and Zarzak now, but regardless. So back to what we were talking about a little bit. I wanted to bring this up because this is stuff that is happening, and you, the player, can affect how these things are playing out. The reason why, now I could predict, when the three Galente systems all fail to complete because they're all in solitude, I can always sit back and be like, tosh, how obvious. That is a predictable thing to have happen. But you know what? It would have taken 10 people. If 10 people had given a shit and just been like, nope, we're going to make this happen, and went to and brought their fleet to Solitude and ran them there in their T1 cruisers and destroyers. It's not that hard to move it to, the high-sec island. If anybody had actually decided to do that, they would have succeeded more likely than not. It's not like anybody was contesting them in those sites. So there's nothing that forced it to be this way. Every step of the way, players are either playing into the initial conditions or they're doing their own thing with it. Dutch Gunner right now is in this system because it is out of the way and also because it's Mimitar and he gives a shit about that. So this isn't just CCP making a script. These are players making decisions about how they engage with this stuff that is coming to fruition in the form of affecting each step of the way, making certain political powers in the universe stronger or weaker. You know what President Celis Agard can't afford right now? Too many losses. She's about to go up for re-election. I'm pretty sure she would like to get some victories under her belt. You want to help make sure that Celis Agard gets re-elected and people are happy with her? Go help run the sites in Galente space. You want to make sure that the president goes into her re-election process in the weakest state possible? Don't help out the Galente space. Go help out Caldari space or whatever. You said that we knew about this. Why did we lose every system? Yeah, exactly. And like, there are going to be, just like I said, like with the Arshat situation, right? Nobody would have predicted that the entire plot of the next year, I think it was, like a year later, the entire plot of that summer was going to hinge upon that specific transmuter that was captured. Nobody could have predicted it because nobody thought it was going to happen. So that decision by those Edencom forces changed at least the texture, if not the direction of the story from that point on. And in the same way here, individual victories and individual failures, while it isn't necessarily going to make a system join Pochfin right now, but they are affecting this story as it unfolds, as these different, as the empires are in critically weak positions almost across the board and working towards this ever increasing crisis. So this is a big piece of like what it means to get involved. Plus you get a bunch of ISK for it, and you get a bunch of rewards for it. So I think this is pretty cool. I like the fact that they called out by name the people who participated in the successful fleet. And they did actually get they actually did get this in-game medal, right? In-game medals are very rare, but they do put them out for purposes. And we can see on Dutch Gunner here, he has that medal. So this medal, Tash Murkon Dreambreaker Shield, it's been awarded to 24 people. This is it. I think this is also, it's the first to sunder the Vigilant Dreamer. No one else is ever going to get this medal before. Nobody thought that they were going to get this medal, but now Dutch Gunner has this medal and he'll always have it. And I'm sure that he cherishes it and it'll be a token of his remembrance. This is what makes these kinds of events so exciting and worth getting on top of. Please go ahead and pay attention to Dutch Gunner's Fleets, Air Talker Research Consortium, and the Invited. My alliance have been working to run these sites and help against the Drifter crisis. It's good ISK, and you might get your name in the New Eden News. Let's see. Anything else to cover in this before we wrap it up? I do think it's fun. Like, we didn't actually get too much of an end about it. We do see that there was complaints about the Nabali Mind Clash tournament. I wonder if this will ever matter. I don't know. Either way, it could just be fluff. Been getting 8 to 900 million ISK an hour in those Lancer sites with 5 AUGs. I don't believe you. Well, they do constantly respawn, but if they take more than 7 minutes, oh yeah. Are you talking about 8 to 900 million ISK per hour for the entire group or per individual? Okay. Yeah. No, that checks out. Yeah. Across all 5. All right. Well, either way, we're going to talk about this more throughout the course of the stream. But for those of us who are here for just the New Eden News, this has been your New Eden News for February 11th, YC127. Obviously, this is a developing operation. Please check out my live streams if you don't, where I record all these videos live before they get edited and put on my YouTube. If you are watching this edited, please like it and share it with another person and let me know what you think about what is happening and what might come next, because all signs indicate that this is only going to get more ramped up, more bigger. What do you have any hopes for? I did hear some people talking about maybe some drifter equipment for players to be able to use. I'm still not 100% convinced on that, because the CCP really drifters to be like the big bad end guy. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there's going to be somewhere that we're going with all of this? Do you think it'll be resolved by FanFest? Do you think that we're going to have a presidential election in the next few months? I don't know. But if you want to find out about it, as it happens, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out my stuff as I record it live, or just watch the videos as they come out edited. But with all that said, I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space.